Grace's hands trembled as she watched the black police van pull up to the curb. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The van door opened with a loud bang. Out stepped a tall, dark man in orange prison clothes. His hair was wild with long dreads, his eyes cold as midnight. When those dark eyes found hers, Grace felt her blood freeze. "That's him," Victoria whispered behind her, barely containing her laughter. "That's your husband-to-be." Margaret giggled like a schoolgirl. "Look at Grace's face. She's about to faint." The man, Kelvin Hartman, walked straight toward Grace. Each step made her want to run. When he reached her, he extended his hand. "You must be Grace." She stared at his outstretched hand. It looked like it could crush bones. Slowly, she placed her small hand in his. His grip was like steel, firm, unbreakable, like he could snap her fingers with one squeeze if he wanted to. Grace's whole body shook. This was the man she was supposed to marry, an ex-convict with eyes that had seen too much darkness. But how did Grace find herself standing here, about to marry a dangerous stranger she barely knew? Let me tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about family, sacrifice, and survival.
Stay with me to hear how this shocking story unfolded, and make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a story like this. Sit back as we go back to how it all began.
The smell of disinfectant burned Grace's nose as she sat beside Papa Samuel's hospital bed in Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Her grandfather's breathing was shallow, his skin gray like old newspaper. "Papa, please don't leave me," she whispered, squeezing his weak hand. The doctor had been clear. Late-stage liver cancer. He needs surgery immediately, or he has maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and the surgery cost 200,000 naira. Grace looked at her phone. 3 missed calls from her boss at the restaurant where she worked nights. 5 missed calls from her cleaning job supervisor. She had been missing work to stay with Papa Samuel. Her small savings account showed 8,000 naira, not even enough for one day in this hospital. She stared at the number in her phone she hadn't called in 3 years. Margaret, her mother. Grace's finger hovered over the call button. Margaret had made it clear after Grace's father died she didn't want a stepdaughter around. But Papa Samuel was Margaret's father-in-law. Surely she would help. The phone rang 3 times. "What do you want, Grace?" Margaret's voice was ice cold. "You only call when you need something." Grace took a deep breath. "Mama, it's about Papa Samuel." "Don't call me Mama when you want money. What about the old man?" "He needs surgery immediately. The doctors say he has liver cancer, advanced stage." Silence. Grace could hear her mother breathing. "So what do you want me to do? Did I make him sick?" The cruelty in Margaret's voice made Grace's chest tight. "Mama, if you hadn't taken Papa's pension money after Daddy died, would Papa still be working 3 jobs at 70? Would he be this sick?" "How dare you?" Margaret's voice exploded through the phone. "I took that money to survive, to feed Victoria." "You took it to buy that house in Victoria Island, while Papa Samuel moved to a 1-room apartment in Mushin. Your problems are not my problems, Grace." Grace felt tears burning her eyes. "I've maxed out all my credit cards. I work at the restaurant until 2 a.m., then clean offices from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., then tutor children until evening. I sleep 4 hours a night. I'm desperate. That's why I called." "Then get another job." "Mama, please, I can write a promissory note. I'll pay interest. I need 100,000 naira." "Why should my money save him?" Then Grace heard Victoria's voice in the background. "Sister Grace, let me talk to her, Mama." Victoria took the phone. "Grace, big sister, let's discuss this calmly. It's just 100,000, right?" Hope sparked in Grace's chest. "Victoria, thank you. I knew you would understand." "I have an idea. You marry Kelvin Hartman. The money for Papa's treatment, I'll handle it." Grace's world tilted. "Kelvin Hartman, your fiancé." Victoria laughed. "Grace, since we're sisters, how can I not help you? The Hartman family owns half of Lagos Island. Hotels, shipping, oil business. If you marry Kelvin, you'll never worry about money again. But Victoria, he's your man. You love him. Kelvin got kicked out by his family 6 months ago. Everyone in Lagos knows. He's been in and out of prison for fighting. There are videos online of him beating people bloody. Grace felt sick. You want me to marry a violent criminal? Think about Papa Samuel, Grace. Do you want him to die because you're scared? Margaret took the phone back. Grace, Victoria is being generous. Both of you are my daughters. I care about you equally. Equally, Margaret had never visited Grace once in 3 years. I need time to think. Papa Samuel doesn't have time, Victoria said. The surgery is needed this week. Grace looked at her grandfather's pale face. His eyes opened slowly. Grace, my child, he whispered. Don't worry about me, you've done enough. No, Papa, I won't let you die. She took the phone back. Fine, I'll marry Kelvin, but I have conditions. Margaret's voice turned sharp. You're in no position to make demands. 200,000 naira, not 100. Are you crazy? What if you run away with the money? I'm not like you, Mama. I don't abandon family. Grace's voice grew stronger. 20,000 now for Papa's immediate care, the rest after the wedding. She heard Margaret and Victoria whispering. Fine, Margaret said, but the wedding happens in 3 days. 3 days, that's impossible. Kelvin gets released from prison tomorrow. He's been there for assault charges. The wedding is Friday or no deal. Grace's blood went cold. Prison, what did he do? Beat up 3 men at a bar, sent one to intensive care. But don't worry, the charges were dropped. Rich family connections. The line went dead. Grace stared at her phone. She had just agreed to marry a violent stranger to save her grandfather's life. Her phone buzzed immediately. Unknown number. Hello, Grace. This is Kelvin Hartman. Victoria gave me your number. We need to meet. Grace's hands shook as she typed. When? Tomorrow when I get out. Victoria will bring you to see me. That night, Grace couldn't close her eyes. Every time she tried to sleep, she imagined Kelvin's hands around her throat. What kind of man beats 3 people at once? What kind of animal was she about to marry? She looked at Papa Samuel sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. The 20,000 naira had gotten him proper pain medication and a private room. Papa, I hope I'm doing the right thing, she whispered. The next morning, Victoria arrived in her new BMW, wearing designer clothes that cost more than Grace made in 6 months. Ready to meet your husband? Victoria asked, her smile cruel. Why are you really doing this, Victoria? You claim you love Kelvin. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Love, Grace, grow up. Kelvin was useful when his family accepted him. Now he's broke and dangerous. I found someone better, someone clean. So you're throwing him to me like garbage. I'm giving you a chance to save Papa Samuel. Stop being ungrateful. They drove through Lagos traffic toward a police station in Ikoyi. Victoria's music was too loud, her perfume too strong. Everything about her seemed fake. Victoria, what if Kelvin hurts me? Then you'll learn to be stronger. Marriage isn't a fairy tale, Grace. At the police station, they waited outside by Victoria's car. Other families were there too, waiting for their people to be released. Then Grace saw the van. And now here she stood, Kelvin's steel grip making her fingers numb, staring into the darkest eyes she had ever seen. Afraid of me? Kelvin asked quietly. His voice was deep, rough. Grace wanted to lie, but the truth came out. Yes. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, respect. Good, he said. Fear keeps people alive. Victoria stepped forward. Kelvin, meet Grace, your new bride. Grace, meet Kelvin. Try not to make him angry. Kelvin's grip on Grace's hand tightened slightly. Not painful, but firm, like a warning. We need to talk, he told Grace. Alone. Victoria laughed. I'll leave you two lovebirds to get acquainted. Grace, try not to disappoint him. As Victoria and Margaret drove away, Grace found herself alone with a man who looked like he could kill someone with his bare hands. Kelvin studied her face for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone like Victoria, greedy, fake. Grace lifted her chin. I'm nothing like Victoria. Then why are you marrying a stranger? Grace met his dark stare. Why are you marrying me? Kelvin's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Because sometimes the devil you know is worse than the devil you don't. Sometimes life forces us to choose between impossible options. Grace chose to trust a dangerous stranger rather than let her grandfather die. But what secrets was Kelvin hiding? And why did a man from Lagos's richest family end up in prison clothes? After leaving the police station, Kelvin brought Grace to a small apartment in Lekki Phase 1. Not the mansion she expected from Lagos's richest family, but clean and simple. This is where I live now, Kelvin said, opening the door. Not the Hartman estate in Ikoyi, but its home. Grace looked around. One bedroom, small kitchen, basic furniture. Everything was neat, organized. Not what she expected from a violent criminal. You're surprised, Kelvin observed. I thought it would be different. Messier, more dangerous. Kelvin's dark eyes studied her. What else did Victoria tell you about me? Grace hesitated. That you beat up 3 men, that you're violent. Kelvin was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the kitchen and started making tea. His movements were careful, controlled. The 3 men were trying to rape a girl outside a club, he said without turning around. She couldn't have been more than 16. They had her cornered in an alley. Grace's breath caught. What? I didn't plan to fight them. I told them to stop. They laughed, said they would make me watch. Kelvin's voice was flat, emotionless. So I stopped them. You saved her. I stopped them. Kelvin brought Grace a cup of tea. The girl ran away before police came. The 3 men were sons of politicians. Their story was that I attacked them for no reason. Grace studied Kelvin's face. No pride, no boasting, just facts. Why didn't you tell the truth in court? Who would believe an ex-convict over 3 rich boys? Kelvin shrugged. Besides, the truth doesn't matter to people like your sister. Grace felt a chill. What do you mean? Victoria knows exactly who I am. She's been planning this for months. Planning what? Kelvin sat across from Grace. Sit down. There are things you need to know before tomorrow. Grace's legs felt weak. She sat. 6 months ago, my family discovered I had been secretly giving money to orphanages and schools in Mushin and Agegunnel. Millions of naira. That's good, right? Kelvin's laugh was bitter. Not to the Hartman family. They said I was embarrassing them, wasting money on worthless people. Grace felt anger rising in her chest. Worthless people, those are children. Exactly what I said, so they cut me off, froze all my accounts, kicked me out of the family business. But you're still their son. To them, I'm a disappointment, a failure who cares more about street children than family profit. Grace was quiet, processing this. The man everyone called violent was actually helping children. So how do you survive? I drive for ride-sharing apps. I do construction work. I survive. Grace looked around the simple apartment with new eyes. Kelvin Hartman, heir to billions, was living like a regular Lagos man because he chose to help children. Victoria knows all this. Victoria knows everything. She also knows my family wants me to marry someone suitable to restore my reputation, someone they can control. The pieces clicked in Grace's mind. So by marrying me, they'll think I'm finally being responsible. Marrying a nice, poor girl who needs saving. It makes them look good. And Victoria gets rid of you while helping her sister. She looks generous. Now you understand. Grace felt sick. We're both being used. Yes, but Grace, Kelvin leaned forward. I meant what I said at the station. Sometimes the devil you know is worse than the devil you don't. What do you mean? Your family sold you to save an old man. My family wants to use me to save their reputation. At least we know we're both trapped. Grace stared at her tea. Steam rose between them like a barrier. Are you really violent? She asked quietly. I can be, when I need to be, to protect people who can't protect themselves. Something in his voice made Grace look up. Kelvin's dark eyes held her steadily. Will you hurt me? Never. How can I believe you? Because you're not my enemy, Grace. You're my partner in this prison. That evening, Grace returned to Papa Samuel's hospital room. The old man was sitting up, looking stronger. Papa, you look better. The medicine is helping, but Grace, my child, I'm worried about you. Grace sat beside his bed. Don't worry about me, Papa. This marriage, are you sure? Grace had been dreading this conversation. Papa, it's the only way to save you. I don't want to be saved if it costs you your happiness. Tears filled Grace's eyes. Papa, you raised me after Daddy died. When Mama abandoned me, you were there. You taught me to read, to be strong. Let me save you now. Papa Samuel took her hand with his frail fingers. Promise me something. Anything. If this man hurts you, you leave. My life is not worth your suffering. He won't hurt me, Papa. But even as she said it, Grace wondered if she was lying to them both. The next morning, Victoria picked Grace up early. Wedding day, Victoria sang. Are you excited? Grace had barely slept. Where are we going first? To get your dress, then hair and makeup. Tonight you become Mrs. Kelvin Hartman. They drove to an expensive boutique in Victoria Island, the kind of place Grace had only seen in magazines. Inside, dresses hung like dreams. Silk, lace, crystals. Each one cost more than Grace made in a year. We want the best, Victoria announced to the boutique owner. Money is no object. The woman smiled until she saw Grace. Her expression changed immediately. I'm sorry, but we require full payment before trying on any dresses. Grace felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. How much? Victoria asked. Our premium collection starts at 100,000 naira. Victoria's smile faded. That's expensive. Perhaps there's another boutique more suitable for your budget. Grace wanted to disappear. This was exactly why she hated being around Victoria's world. Then the boutique door opened. Kelvin walked in, wearing a simple black shirt and jeans, but something about him made the entire boutique go quiet. Good morning, he said politely to the owner. My wife needs a wedding dress. The woman's face went pale. Mr. Hartman. You know me. Of course, sir, we didn't realize. Please, anything you need. Suddenly, the woman was all smiles and bowing. Grace watched in amazement as the same person who had looked down on her now treated her like royalty. Show her everything, Kelvin said simply. Yes, sir, right away. As the woman rushed to bring dresses, Grace whispered to Kelvin, she's scared of you. Not me, my family name. Even though they rejected me, the name still has power. Grace tried on dress after dress. Each one was more beautiful than the last, but she felt like she was playing dress-up for someone else's life. Finally, she found the one. Simple, elegant, perfect. The price tag made her dizzy. 160,000 naira, the owner said. Full payment required. Grace's heart sank. That was almost Papa Samuel's entire surgery cost. Don't worry about the price, Kelvin said quietly. My wife deserves the best. He pulled out a card and paid without blinking. As they left the boutique, Grace felt overwhelmed. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You're going to be my wife. Even if it's not a real marriage, you deserve to feel beautiful. But the money. Grace, I may be poor by Hartman's standards, but I'm not completely broke. Let me do this one thing right. That afternoon, Victoria took Grace to a salon. Hair, makeup, nails. Grace had never been pampered like this. You look like a princess, the makeup artist said. But Grace felt like she was being prepared for sacrifice. Evening came too quickly. Grace stood in the dressing room at the church, wearing her beautiful dress, looking like someone else. Victoria knocked on the door. Ready, sister? No. Too bad, it's time. Grace walked down the aisle toward Kelvin. He stood at the altar in a black suit, looking handsome and dangerous. His dark eyes never left her face. The pastor spoke about love, commitment, faithfulness. Words that meant nothing in this arranged marriage. Do you, Kelvin, take Grace to be your wife? I do. Do you, Grace, take Kelvin to be your husband? Grace looked at Kelvin's face. In his dark eyes, she saw understanding. They were both trapped, but they were trapped together. I do. You may kiss the bride. Kelvin stepped closer. His hands were gentle as he lifted her veil. For a moment, Grace forgot to be afraid. The kiss was soft, brief, but something passed between them in that moment. A promise, an understanding. I pronounce you husband and wife. The small crowd applauded. Margaret and Victoria smiled like they had accomplished something wonderful. But Grace felt like she had just signed her life away. But as they greeted their guests, Grace noticed something that made her blood freeze. Margaret and Victoria wore smug grins. Why did Margaret and Victoria look so satisfied, like they had just won a game Grace didn't know she was playing? What had she gotten herself into? Grace stood in the small apartment bathroom, still wearing her wedding dress. Through the thin walls, she could hear Lagos traffic and distant music from a neighbor's radio. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked like a stranger. She was married now, Mrs. Grace Hartman. The name felt heavy on her tongue. A soft knock on the bathroom door made her jump. Grace, are you okay in there? Kelvin's voice was gentle, but Grace's heart still raced. This was it, her wedding night with a man she barely knew. I'm fine, she called back, though her voice shook. Take your time, I'll be in the living room. Grace heard his footsteps move away. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Kelvin was sitting on the small couch, still in his wedding suit but with the tie loosened. He looked up when she emerged. You look tired, he observed. It's been a long day. Grace, we need to talk about sleeping arrangements. Grace's stomach twisted with nervousness. What about them? Kelvin stood up slowly, his movements careful, non-threatening. You take the bedroom, I'll sleep on the couch. Grace blinked in surprise. What? I know this isn't a real marriage. You're scared of me, and you have every right to be. I won't make this harder for you than it already is. Relief flooded through Grace so strongly her knees almost buckled. You're not going to. No, never without your permission, and probably not even then, considering the circumstances. Grace studied his face. Why are you being kind to me? Because someone should be. The simple answer hit Grace harder than any grand speech. When was the last time someone had been kind to her just because she deserved it? Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me for basic human decency. That night, Grace lay in Kelvin's bed while he slept on the couch. The sheets smelled like soap and something masculine but clean. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Lagos at night. Tomorrow she would have to face her new life, but tonight, for the first time in months, she felt safe. The next morning, Grace woke to the smell of coffee and something cooking. She found Kelvin in the small kitchen, making breakfast. Good morning, Mrs. Hartman, he said with a slight smile. Don't call me that, it sounds strange. You'll get used to it, coffee. Grace accepted the cup gratefully. You cook. Basic survival skills, scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy. Grace watched him move around the kitchen with easy efficiency. Where did you learn? Prison mostly, and living alone these past 6 months. The casual mention of prison should have scared Grace, but somehow it didn't. Not anymore. Kelvin, can I ask you something? Of course. Yesterday you said sometimes the devil you know is worse than the devil you don't. What did you mean? Kelvin was quiet for a moment, flipping eggs in the pan. Your family sold you to save an old man, but they're still your family. You know exactly how cruel they can be. And you? I'm a stranger. You don't know what I'm capable of. That's scary, but it also means you don't have years of disappointment and betrayal clouding your judgment. Grace considered this. So you think we have a chance? I think we have honesty. That's more than most married couples start with. After breakfast, Grace's phone rang. Margaret. Grace, how was your wedding night? Her mother's voice was sickeningly sweet. Fine, Mama. Good, now listen carefully. The Hartman family is having a welcome dinner for you tonight. You need to make a good impression. Grace's stomach dropped. Tonight, but I don't have anything to wear. I don't know how to act around rich people. Figure it out. This is important for our family's reputation. What do you mean, our family's reputation? Since you married into the Hartman family, people see the whole James family differently now. Don't embarrass us. The line went dead. Grace stared at her phone in disbelief. Bad news, Kelvin asked. Your family wants to meet me tonight. Some welcome dinner. Kelvin's expression darkened. They didn't waste any time. What does that mean? It means they want to see what kind of wife I've brought home. They want to evaluate you. Grace felt panic rising. I can't do this. I don't know anything about their world. Grace, look at me. She met his dark eyes. You survived growing up with Margaret and Victoria. You worked 3 jobs to pay for your grandfather's care. You married a dangerous stranger to save someone you love. Do you really think my family is scarier than what you've already faced? Grace thought about it. When you put it that way. Besides, I'll be there. We're a team now, remember. That afternoon, Kelvin took Grace shopping in Victoria Island. Not to the expensive boutique where they'd bought her wedding dress, but to a more modest store. We need to be careful with money, he explained. I have enough saved for emergencies, but I'm not rich anymore, for now anyway. Grace found a simple lilac dress that made her look elegant without being flashy. Perfect, Kelvin said when she showed him. You look beautiful, but not like you're trying too hard. Is that important? With my family, everything is important. They'll judge your clothes, your speech, your posture, how you hold your fork. Grace felt overwhelmed. Maybe this was a mistake. Hey, Kelvin took her hands gently. Remember what I said about being a team. Grace nodded. Then trust me, I know these people. I know their games. Just follow my lead. That evening, they took a taxi to the Hartman family mansion in Ikoyi. Grace had seen pictures of houses like this in magazines, but experiencing it in person was different. The gates were massive, the compound enormous. This is where you grew up, Grace whispered as they approached the front door. Unfortunately, yes. The door was opened by a uniformed servant who bowed slightly to Kelvin. Master Kelvin, welcome home. The family is waiting in the dining room. As they walked through marble hallways lined with expensive art, Grace felt like she was entering another world. Everything was perfect, polished, cold. The living room was enormous, with cushions that could seat 20 people. But only 3 people sat in them. An elderly man with sharp eyes, an elegant woman with red hedgie, and a younger lady who looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine. Father, Kelvin said formally, thank you for inviting us. The elderly man, Kelvin's father's eyes swept over Grace like she was an item in a shop he was considering buying. So this is your new wife? Yes, sir, this is Grace. Grace felt all eyes on her as she stepped forward. Good evening, sir. Thank you for welcoming me into your family. She had practiced the words with Kelvin, but they still felt awkward in her mouth. "Sit down, both of you." Dinner was an ordeal. 7 courses served by silent servants, while Kelvin's family asked Grace question after question. "Where did you go to school, Grace?" "Lagos State University, Ma." "What did you study?" "Accounting." "And what work do you do?" Grace hesitated. Should she mention her 3 jobs, the restaurant, the cleaning, the tutoring? "I work in customer service," she said finally. Kelvin's mother, Mrs. Patricia Hartman, smiled coldly. How practical. The younger woman, who had been introduced as Kelvin's sister-in-law Sandra, leaned forward. "And your family, Grace? What business are they in?" "My stepfather works in construction." "Construction," Mr. Hartman repeated slowly. "I see." Grace felt like a bug under a microscope. Every answer seemed to disappoint them more. "Tell me, Grace," Mr. Hartman said as dessert was served, "what made you want to marry my son?" The question hung in the air like a trap. Grace felt Kelvin tense beside her. He put an arm around her as if cautioning her to be careful while comforting her at the same time. She could lie, say she loved him, but something in the old man's eyes told her he would see through any lie. "I needed help," she said quietly, "and Kelvin needed a wife. We made a practical arrangement." The table went completely silent. Grace wondered if she had just ruined everything. Then Mr. Hartman smiled, not warmly but with approval. "Honesty, I respect that." He turned to Kelvin. "She's not what I expected." "No, sir." "Better or worse?" Kelvin looked at Grace for a moment. "Different." After dinner, Mr. Hartman asked to speak with Kelvin privately. Grace waited in the sitting room with the women. "So, Grace," Mrs. Hartman said sweetly, "how are you finding married life?" "It's an adjustment, Ma." "I'm sure it is. Kelvin can be difficult." Sandra laughed. "That's putting it mildly. Did he tell you about his time in prison?" "Yes, Ma." "And you married him anyway?" Sandra's voice was full of fake concern. "How brave of you." Grace felt like she was being circled by sharks. "Kelvin is a good man." "Is he?" Mrs. Hartman asked. "How can you be sure? You barely know him." "I know enough." "Do you know about his temper, the fights, the drinking?" Grace's heart started racing. "Drinking?" "Oh yes. Kelvin has quite a problem with alcohol, didn't he tell you? It's what led to most of his incidents." Sandra nodded sympathetically. "We worry about him, and now we have to worry about you too." Grace felt like the room was spinning. Was Kelvin an alcoholic? Had he lied to her about everything? 20 minutes later, Kelvin returned with his father. His face was grim. "Ready to go?" he asked Grace. She nodded, not trusting her voice. In the taxi back to their apartment, Grace was quiet. "How bad was it?" Kelvin asked. "They said you have a drinking problem." Kelvin sighed heavily. "Grace, I need to tell you something." Grace's heart sank. Another lie. "I did have a drinking problem 2 years ago, after I started giving money to the orphanages and my family began turning against me." Grace felt betrayed. "You should have told me." "You're right, I should have. But Grace, I've been sober for 18 months. I haven't touched alcohol since before my first arrest." "How can I believe you?" "Because I'm telling you now when I don't have to. Because I could have kept lying." Grace stared out the taxi window at Lagos rushing past. How many more secrets was her husband hiding? "What else haven't you told me?" "Nothing that affects you directly. But Grace, there's something you need to know about tonight." "What?" "My father offered me a deal." Grace's stomach clenched. "What kind of deal?" "If I stay married to you for 1 year, he'll give me back my position in the company. Full access to my trust fund. Everything." Grace felt like she'd been slapped. "So I'm what, a business investment?" "That's what he thinks. But Grace, what I told you yesterday hasn't changed. We're still partners in this." Partners in what? Your redemption. Partners in survival. Grace was quiet for the rest of the ride home. When they reached their apartment, she went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. She sat on the bed, still in her black dress, and tried to process everything. Her husband was a recovering alcoholic. His family saw her as a test. Everyone was using everyone. But when she remembered how gently Kelvin had treated her, how he'd slept on the couch to make her comfortable, how he'd defended her during dinner. Maybe being used by Kelvin was still better than being abandoned by her real family. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Grace, I made tea." She opened the door. Kelvin stood there with 2 cups, looking tired and sad. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the drinking. I should have been completely honest from the beginning." Grace took the tea. "Why weren't you?" "Because I was afraid you'd change your mind about marrying me, and your grandfather needed that surgery." Grace sat on the bed. Kelvin sat on the floor, keeping distance between them. "1 year," she asked. "That's what he offered." "And then what? You get your money back and divorce me?" "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead." Grace studied his face in the lamplight. "You could have anyone, Kelvin. Why stay married to someone you barely know?" "Because," Kelvin said quietly, "you're the first person in 2 years who's treated me like I'm worth something, even when you were scared of me." Grace felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, but understanding. 18 months sober. 18 months. "And if you drink again?" "Then you leave, no questions asked." Grace nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay. 1 year, we'll figure it out as we go." Kelvin's smile was small but real. "Partners." "Partners." Their moment was cut short by her phone ringing. "Hello." "Grace, it's me." Papa Samuel's weak voice made her sit up immediately. "Papa, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, my child, but there's something I need to tell you. Your mother came to see me yesterday." Grace's blood went cold. "Margaret came to the hospital. Why?" "She brought papers for me to sign. Said they were for insurance, to help with my medical bills." "What kind of papers?" Papa Samuel coughed softly. "I didn't understand them properly. Too many big words. But Grace, something felt wrong about the whole thing." Grace was already getting out of bed. "Papa, do you still have the papers?" "She took them after I signed. Said she would handle everything." Grace felt sick. Margaret never helped anyone without expecting something in return. "Papa, I'm coming to see you right now." Kelvin took one look at Grace's face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" "My mother made Papa Samuel sign some papers yesterday. I don't know what they were, but I have a bad feeling." Kelvin set down his coffee cup. "Want me to come with you?" "You don't have to." "Grace, we're partners, remember. What affects you affects me now." At the hospital, Papa Samuel looked smaller and frailer than he had just 2 days ago, but his eyes were alert when Grace and Kelvin entered his room. "Papa, this is my husband, Kelvin." Papa Samuel studied Kelvin with sharp eyes. "So you're the young man who married my granddaughter?" "Yes, sir. It's an honor to meet you." "Sit down, both of you. We need to talk." Papa Samuel told them exactly what had happened. Margaret had arrived with Victoria and another woman Grace didn't recognize. She said the papers were to make sure my medical bills were covered by insurance, that the Hartman family had special insurance that could help. Grace and Kelvin exchanged glances. There was no special insurance. "Did they say anything else, Papa?" "The other woman, the one I didn't know, she kept asking questions about you, Grace, about your marriage, about where you live now." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you seemed happy, whether your husband treated you well, whether you had mentioned any problems." Kelvin's jaw tightened. "What did you tell them?" "I told them Grace looked happier than she had in months, that her husband seemed like a good man who cared about her. Grace felt warmth spread through her chest. Papa Samuel approved of Kelvin. "Papa, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember exactly what those papers said?" Papa Samuel closed his eyes, thinking. Something about medical power of attorney, and something about property transfer in case of emergency. Grace's heart stopped. Property transfer. She said it was just in case something happened to me, to make sure you could inherit my things without problems. But Papa Samuel didn't own anything valuable except, "Papa, your house in Mushin, the one Daddy bought before he died, is it still in your name?" "Yes, my child. I always planned to leave it to you." Grace felt like she was going to be sick. Margaret had tricked Papa Samuel into signing over the house. After leaving the hospital, Grace was quiet during the taxi ride home. Kelvin could see her mind working. "Talk to me," he said gently. "She stole his house, Kelvin. That house is the only thing Papa Samuel has left from my father. It's supposed to be mine after he's gone." "Are you sure that's what the papers were for?" "I know my mother. She doesn't visit sick people out of kindness." At home, Grace immediately called a lawyer friend of Papa Samuel's. Mr. Smith had helped her father buy the house 20 years ago. "Grace, my dear, how are you? I heard about your grandfather's illness." "Uncle Smith, I need your help. I think someone tricked Papa Samuel into signing legal papers yesterday." "What kind of papers?" Grace explained everything. Uncle Smith was quiet for a long moment. "Grace, this is very serious. If your mother made him sign a property transfer under false pretenses, that's fraud." "What can we do?" "First, I need to see exactly what papers were filed. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" Grace hung up and found Kelvin watching her with concern. "The lawyer wants to see us this afternoon." "Us? I mean me, you don't have to." Grace, stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Acting like you're alone in this. We're married now. Your problems are my problems." Grace stared at him. "Why do you care so much? This isn't your fight." Kelvin was quiet for a moment. "Do you know what it's like to have a family that only sees you as something to use?" Grace nodded slowly. "Then you know why I care. Because maybe we can protect each other from people like that." That afternoon, Uncle Smith confirmed Grace's worst fears. "She filed a deed transfer this morning. The house is now legally in Margaret's name." Grace felt like the ground was falling away beneath her. "Can we stop it?" "We can try. But Grace, your grandfather signed the papers willingly. Even if he was deceived, it will be hard to prove in court." "How much would a court case cost?" Kelvin asked. "Minimum of 500,000 naira. Maybe more if Margaret fights it." Grace's head was spinning. 500,000 naira. More money than she had ever imagined having. "There might be another way," Uncle Smith said slowly. "What way?" "If we can prove Margaret committed fraud, the police could investigate. But Grace, that would mean pressing charges against your own mother." Grace walked out of the lawyer's office feeling lost. On the street, Lagos life continued around them, people going to work, children playing, vendors selling food. Normal life while her world fell apart. "What are you thinking?" Kelvin asked as they boarded a taxi. "I'm thinking about pressing charges against my mother." "And how does that make you feel?" Grace laughed bitterly, like a terrible daughter. "Grace, look at me." She met his eyes. What kind of mother steals from her sick father-in-law? What kind of mother uses her daughter's marriage to commit fraud? "You think that's what this is about, my marriage to you?" "I think Margaret saw an opportunity. Rich son-in-law means wealthy family connections. Maybe she thought she could use that somehow." The next morning, Grace's phone rang again. "Victoria." "Sister Grace, how are you enjoying married life?" Grace's voice was ice cold. "What do you want, Victoria?" So hostile, I'm calling with good news. Mama wants to throw you a proper wedding reception, something bigger than that small church ceremony. Why? Because you're a Hartman now, we need to celebrate properly. Show Lagos society that our family has connections. There it was. Margaret's real plan was becoming clear. When? This weekend. We've already booked the venue. Grand Ballroom at the Intercontinental Hotel. Grace's mind raced. That venue cost hundreds of thousands of naira. Victoria, how are you paying for this? Don't worry about money, sister. We have it handled. Grace knew exactly how they had it handled, with Papa Samuel's house. I need to think about it. Think about what? It's your wedding reception. Besides, we already sent invitations to important people, business connections, politicians, everyone who matters in Lagos. Grace felt trapped again. You sent invitations without asking me. We wanted it to be a surprise. Oh, and Grace, make sure Kelvin brings his family. This is a chance for the Adebio family to make real connections with the Hartmans. The line went dead. Grace stared at her phone, feeling sick. More bad news? Kelvin asked. Grace told him about the wedding reception. Kelvin's expression grew darker with every detail. They're using us, he said finally. What do you mean? Think about it, Grace. They steal your grandfather's house to pay for a fancy party. They invite every important person in Lagos. They want to show off their connection to my family. But your family threw you out. Most people don't know that. The Hartman name still opens doors. Grace sank into the couch. So what do? We have two choices. Go along with it and let them use us, or what? Or we fight back. Grace looked at Kelvin's face. In his dark eyes, she saw determination and something else, anger on her behalf. What did you have in mind? Kelvin smiled, and for the first time, Grace saw something dangerous in that smile. Your mother thinks she's so clever, stealing from an old man to throw a party, but she made one mistake. What mistake? She assumed I would play nice to protect my family's reputation. Grace felt a chill of excitement, and you won't. Grace, I spent 6 months in prison because I refused to let bad people get away with hurting good people. Your mother just hurt Papa Samuel. She stole from him when he's dying. So what do? We go to this party. We smile and play the happy couple. And then we make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people Margaret and Victoria really are. Grace stared at him. That's dangerous. They could destroy us. They're already destroying you. At least this way we fight back. That night, as Grace tried to sleep, she thought about everything that had happened. 2 weeks ago, her biggest problem was paying Papa Samuel's hospital bills. Now, she was married to a stranger and planning to expose her mother's crimes at a fancy party. But for the first time since her father died, Grace didn't feel alone. Through the thin walls, she could hear Kelvin moving around in the living room, probably planning their next move. Grace smiled in the darkness. Margaret had made one crucial error in her calculations. She had assumed Grace would always be the scared, obedient daughter who never fought back. But Margaret had never seen Grace with an ally before. The grand ballroom at the Intercontinental Hotel sparkled like a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, tables covered in gold silk. Grace had never seen anything so beautiful or so expensive. This must have cost millions, she whispered to Kelvin as they entered. At least 3 million naira, he replied quietly, maybe more. Grace felt sick knowing where that money had come from. Papa Samuel's house, sold to pay for Margaret's social climbing party. Margaret rushed toward them, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Grace's old yearly salary. Grace, Kelvin, you look wonderful. Margaret's smile was bright and fake. Come, let me introduce you to some very important people. Before Grace could protest, Margaret dragged them toward a group of well-dressed older men. "Everyone, meet my daughter Grace and her husband, Kelvin Hartman." The men's faces changed immediately when they heard the Hartman name. Suddenly, they were all smiles and handshakes. "Hartman Industries, what an honor. We've been hoping to do business with your family for years. Perhaps we can arrange a meeting sometime." Kelvin smiled politely, but said nothing committal. Grace watched him navigate the social waters with practiced skill. "Excuse us," Kelvin said finally. "We need to greet other guests." As they walked away, Grace whispered, "They think you have power in your family's business." That's exactly what Margaret wants them to think. Across the ballroom, Grace spotted Victoria in a stunning red dress, laughing with a group of young socialites. "Look at Victoria," Grace murmured. "She's acting like she planned this whole thing." She probably did. This kind of event takes weeks to organize. Grace's anger flared. "They've been planning this since before we got married, maybe even before Papa Samuel got sick." "Grace, look around. What do you see?" Grace surveyed the room, rich people having a good time. "I see business cards being exchanged, deals being discussed. Your mother is working this room like a professional networker." Grace watched Margaret move from group to group, always mentioning her daughter's marriage to a Hartman, always implying connections she didn't have. "She's using our marriage to build business relationships. And when these people find out I have no real power in my family's company, they'll be angry, very angry." Grace felt a chill. What happens then? "They'll blame Margaret for lying to them, and they'll blame you for being part of the deception." Before Grace could respond, the ballroom doors opened. The Hartman family entered like royalty. Mr. and Mrs. Hartman, Kelvin's brother Marcus with his wife Sandra, and several other family members Grace didn't recognize. The room went quiet. Every eye turned toward the Hartman family. Margaret practically ran toward them, her face glowing with triumph. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartman, thank you so much for coming. This means everything to our family." Mr. Hartman's face was stone cold. "Margaret, please, let me introduce you to some of Lagos's most important business leaders." "That won't be necessary," Mrs. Hartman said icily. "We're here for family reasons only." Grace saw Margaret's face fall slightly, but she recovered quickly. The evening continued with dinner and speeches. Victoria gave a toast about family unity and new beginnings. Margaret spoke about how proud she was of her daughter's marriage. But Grace noticed the Hartman family saying nothing. They sat like statues, eating in silence. During the main course, Kelvin leaned close to Grace's ear. "My father wants to talk to you privately after dinner." Grace's stomach dropped. "About what?" "I don't know, but Grace, whatever he says, remember that we're partners." After dinner, Mr. Hartman approached Grace. "Mrs. Hartman, may I speak with you privately?" Grace looked at Kelvin, who nodded encouragingly. Mr. Hartman led her to a small private room off the main ballroom. "Sit down, Grace." She sat, trying to keep her hands from shaking. "Tell me about this reception. Whose idea was it?" "My mother's and sister's, sir." "And who paid for it?" Grace hesitated. Should she tell the truth about Papa Samuel's house? "I'm waiting, Grace." "My mother paid for it, sir." "With what money?" Grace took a deep breath. "She made my dying grandfather sign papers transferring his house to her name. Then she sold it to pay for this party." Mr. Hartman's eyebrows rose. "She stole from a dying old man to throw herself a party." "Yes, sir." "And you allowed this?" "I didn't know until after it was done. By then, the money was spent." Mr. Hartman studied her face for a long moment. "Grace, do you know why I came tonight?" "No, sir." "Because I wanted to see what kind of family my son had married into." Grace's heart sank. "And what do you think?" I think your mother is dangerous, and I think you might be just like her." "I'm not." "Prove it." "How?" Mr. Hartman pulled out his phone and made a call. "Bring him in." A few minutes later, the door opened. A man in a security uniform entered, leading someone Grace recognized. Uncle Smith, Papa Samuel's lawyer. "Uncle Smith, what are you doing here?" The lawyer looked nervous. "Grace, I'm sorry, but Mr. Hartman called me. He wanted to verify your story about your grandfather's house." Mr. Hartman looked at Grace. "I had your story checked. You told the truth." Grace felt confused. "Why did you need to check?" "Because your mother told me a different story entirely." "What did she tell you?" "She said you asked her to help you get money for this reception. She said you wanted to impress my family." Grace's world tilted. "That's not true." "I know, that's why I had it investigated." Mr. Hartman's voice softened slightly. "Grace, your mother isn't just using you, she's trying to destroy you." "What do you mean?" "She's been spreading rumors around Lagos that you married Kelvin for money, that you're a gold digger who manipulated a troubled man." Grace felt like she couldn't breathe. Why would she do that? "Because if people believe you're a gold digger, then when your marriage fails, no one will blame her. They'll blame you." "But why would she want my marriage to fail?" Uncle Smith spoke quietly. "Because she has another plan, Grace. She's been meeting with lawyers about getting power of attorney over you." "What?" "If your marriage falls apart, if people think you're unstable or unfit, she can claim you need someone to manage your affairs." The pieces fell into place in Grace's mind. "She wants control over any money I might get from Kelvin." "Exactly," Mr. Hartman said. "She's playing a very long game." Grace sat in stunned silence. Her mother hadn't just stolen Papa Samuel's house. She was trying to steal Grace's entire future. "What do I do?" she whispered. Mr. Hartman stood up. "You have two choices. You can let her win or you can fight back." "How do I fight back?" "Come back to the party with me. Stand beside my son. Show everyone that you're not the person your mother claims you are." Grace followed Mr. Hartman back to the ballroom. The party was in full swing, but she felt like she was seeing everything through new eyes. Margaret was still working the room, but now Grace could see the poison behind her smile. Every conversation, every introduction was part of her plan to destroy Grace while building herself up. Kelvin appeared beside her immediately. "What happened? You look pale." Grace quickly told him everything Mr. Hartman had revealed. Kelvin's face grew darker with every word. "She's been planning this for months," he said finally. "What do we do now?" Kelvin looked around the room, then back at Grace. "We do exactly what we planned. We expose her. But if she's been spreading rumors about me, then we make sure everyone knows the truth." Kelvin walked to the small stage where the band had been playing. He picked up the microphone. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention?" The room gradually went quiet. All eyes turned to Kelvin. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my marriage to Grace, but there's something I need to share with all of you." Grace felt her heart pounding. This was it. 3 days ago, Grace's grandfather, a sick, dying old man, was tricked into signing papers transferring his house to Margaret Adebio. A murmur went through the crowd. That house was sold to pay for this party. Every flower, every piece of food, every decoration was bought with money stolen from a dying man. The murmur became shocked gasps. Margaret's face went white. She started moving toward the stage. "Kelvin, stop this nonsense." "Mrs. Jameselso told several people in this room that my wife is a gold digger who manipulated me into marriage. That Grace is unstable and unfit." Grace saw several guests looking uncomfortable, recognizing themselves in Kelvin's words. But here's what Mrs. James didn't tell you. Grace works 3 jobs to pay for her grandfather's medical care. She married me not for money, but to save a dying man's life. She's the most honest person I've ever met." Victoria tried to reach the microphone. "Kelvin, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly, Victoria. You and your mother saw my marriage as an opportunity, a chance to steal from an old man and use my family name to build business connections." The room was completely silent now. "So I want to make something very clear to everyone here. Any business deals you think you have with the Hartman family through Margaret James don't exist. Any connections you think she can provide are imaginary." Mr. Hartman stood up from his table. "My son is absolutely correct. The Hartman family has no business relationship with the James family. Anyone who was told otherwise was lied to." Grace watched Margaret's face crumble as her carefully built house of lies collapsed. Several guests started leaving immediately. Others whispered angrily among themselves. Victoria grabbed Margaret's arm. "Mama, we need to go now." But Margaret wasn't finished. She walked up to the stage, her face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful girl, after everything I've done for you." "What have you done for me, Mama?" Grace found her voice at last. "You took Daddy's pension when he died. You abandoned me with Papa Samuel. You stole his house to throw yourself a party. What exactly have you done for me?" "I gave you life, and you've been trying to destroy it ever since." Margaret raised her hand to slap Grace, but Kelvin stepped between them. "Touch my wife and you'll regret it." His voice was quiet, but something in his tone made Margaret step back. "This isn't over," Margaret hissed. "Yes, it is," Grace said firmly. "We're done, Mama, you and Victoria. Stay away from me. Stay away from Papa Samuel and stay away from my husband." Margaret and Victoria left the ballroom followed by most of the remaining guests. Grace stood on the stage looking at the ruins of the party, millions of naira wasted, Papa Samuel's house gone forever. But for the first time in her life, Grace felt free. As Grace and Kelvin left the hotel that night, they didn't see the man in the shadows taking photos. Margaret's final weapon wasn't blackmail or lies. It was much worse than that. Grace woke up to her phone buzzing with notifications, message after message from numbers she didn't recognize. Her heart raced as she opened the first one. A photo of her and Kelvin leaving the hotel last night. But something was wrong with the image. It looked like Kelvin was grabbing her arm roughly, like they were fighting. The second message contained another photo. This one showed Grace apparently crying while Kelvin looked angry beside her. But Grace remembered that moment clearly. She hadn't been crying, she had been laughing with relief after finally standing up to Margaret. And Kelvin hadn't been angry, he had been proud of her. Someone had edited the photos to tell a completely different story. "Kelvin," Grace called out, her voice shaking. He appeared in the bedroom doorway immediately, still in his pajamas, holding a cup of coffee. "What's wrong?" Grace showed him the photos. Kelvin's face darkened as he scrolled through them. "These are fake," he said immediately. "I know they're fake, but who's going to believe us?" Kelvin's phone started ringing. Then Grace's phone rang again. Then Kelvin's phone rang once more. "Don't answer any calls," Kelvin said. "Not until we figure out what's happening." But Grace's phone buzzed with a text from Papa Samuel's doctor. "Mrs. Hartman, please come to the hospital immediately. There's been an incident with your grandfather." Grace's blood went cold. Something happened to Papa Samuel. They threw on clothes and rushed to the hospital. In the taxi, Grace's phone kept buzzing with more messages, more fake photos. Now there were images that made it look like she was having an affair with another man. "This is Margaret's work," Kelvin said grimly. "But how? These photos look so real." "There are people who specialize in this kind of thing, digital manipulation. For the right price, they can make anyone look guilty of anything." At the hospital, they found Papa Samuel's room full of people. Margaret, Victoria, 2 police officers, and Dr. Williams. There they are, Margaret pointed at Grace and Kelvin dramatically. Officers, arrest that man for domestic violence. What? Grace stepped forward. Papa Samuel, are you okay? Her grandfather looked confused and frightened. Grace, my child, these people say your husband has been hurting you. One of the police officers, a tall man with sergeant stripes, looked at Grace carefully. Ma'am, we received a report that your husband has been physically abusing you. Do you need medical attention? No, there's no abuse. I don't know what they told you, but it's not true. Margaret stepped forward with her phone. Officers, I have photographic evidence. She showed them the same fake photos Grace had received. These photos were taken last night after a party. As you can see, this man was clearly manhandling my daughter. Dr. Williams looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Hartman, your stepmother also informed us that you might be afraid to tell the truth because your husband threatened you. Grace felt trapped. Doctor, you know me. You've been treating Papa Samuel for months. Have I ever shown any signs of abuse? Dr. Williams hesitated. No, but... But what? Your stepmother says the abuse started after your marriage. She's concerned about your safety. Victoria stepped forward with crocodile tears in her eyes. Sister Grace, you don't have to protect him anymore. We're here to help you. Grace looked around the room. Margaret and Victoria playing the concerned family. The police officers ready to arrest Kelvin. Papa Samuel looking scared and confused. This was Margaret's final weapon. Not just destroying Grace's reputation, but having Kelvin arrested for crimes he didn't commit. Officers, Grace said clearly, I want to make a formal statement. Grace, no, Margaret said quickly. You're traumatized, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Grace's voice grew stronger. I want to report a crime. The sergeant pulled out his notebook. What crime, ma'am? Digital fraud and extortion. These photos have been digitally altered to make my husband look abusive. Someone is trying to frame him. Margaret's face went white. Grace, you don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Mama, you hired someone to create fake photos to destroy my marriage and have my husband arrested. That's ridiculous. Kelvin pulled out his phone. Officer, I'd like to show you something. What is it, sir? Security footage from the hotel last night. Margaret's eyes went wide with panic. Kelvin played the video on his phone. It showed him and Grace leaving the hotel, laughing together. Grace was clearly happy, not crying. Kelvin was gentle with her, not rough. This is the same moment as those photos, Kelvin explained. As you can see, the photos were manipulated. The sergeant compared the video to the photos. Ma'am, these images have definitely been altered. Margaret tried a different approach. Even if the photos are edited, I'm still concerned about Grace's well-being. She's been acting strangely since this marriage. How have I been acting strangely, Mama? You've become rebellious, disrespectful. You never used to talk back to family. Papa Samuel spoke up weakly from his bed. Margaret, the child has become stronger, not strange. For the first time in years, Grace looks happy. Margaret whirled around. Papa Samuel, you don't understand. This man is dangerous. The only dangerous people I see in this room are you and Victoria, Papa Samuel said firmly. Dr. Williams stepped forward. Mrs. Adebio, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I've observed Mrs. Hartman many times over the past months. She shows no signs of trauma or abuse. In fact, since her marriage, she seems more confident and healthy. The sergeant looked at Margaret with suspicion. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a serious crime. I wasn't filing a false report. I was trying to protect my daughter. By showing us fake evidence. Victoria grabbed Margaret's arm. Mama, maybe we should go. But the sergeant wasn't finished. Not so fast. I need to ask you some questions about these photographs. Who created them? Where did you get them? Margaret's composure finally cracked. I don't have to answer your questions. Actually, you do. This appears to be harassment and possibly extortion. Grace watched her mother's careful plan fall apart. For months, Margaret had been building toward this moment, having Kelvin arrested and Grace declared incompetent. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated her own daughter. Officer, Grace said, I want to press charges. Grace, no, Margaret pleaded. I'm your mother. You stopped being my mother the day you chose money over family. The sergeant nodded. What charges do you want to file? Harassment, digital fraud, filing a false police report, and Grace took a deep breath, elder abuse for stealing Papa Samuel's house. Margaret's face went completely pale. You can't prove I stole anything. Kelvin stepped forward. Actually, we can. He pulled out a folder of documents. Uncle Smith provided us with copies of all the paperwork. The signatures don't match Papa Samuel's usual signature. We had a handwriting expert examine them. Grace stared at Kelvin. When did you do this? Yesterday, after we talked to my father. I wanted to be prepared for whatever Margaret tried next. The sergeant took the folder. We'll need to investigate this thoroughly. Ma'am, he looked at Margaret, you'll need to come to the station for questioning. This is ridiculous. I won't be treated like a criminal. You committed crimes, Grace said simply. Multiple crimes. Against me, against Papa Samuel, against Kelvin. Victoria tried one last desperate move. Grace, think about what you're doing. If Mama goes to jail, it will be all over Lagos. Everyone will know. Good, Grace replied. Let everyone know what happens when you mess with people who can't defend themselves. As the police led Margaret away, she turned back to Grace with pure hatred in her eyes. You'll regret this, Grace. I'm still your mother. You need me. No, Mama. I needed you when I was 7 and Daddy died. I needed you when I was 16 and working to pay for school. I needed you when I was 23 and Papa Samuel got sick, but you were never there. Grace's voice grew stronger with each word. I don't need you anymore. I have people who actually care about me now. Victoria followed the police and Margaret out, shooting Grace one last venomous look. After they left, the hospital room felt peaceful for the first time in hours. Papa Samuel reached for Grace's hand. My child, I'm proud of you. Are you really okay, Papa? They didn't hurt you. They scared me with their lies about Kelvin, but I knew in my heart that any man you chose would be a good man. Dr. Williams checked Papa Samuel's vitals. All this stress isn't good for his recovery, but his blood pressure is actually better now than it was this morning. Why? Grace asked. Sometimes holding in worry and fear is worse for the body than releasing it. Your grandfather has been worried about you for months. Now that he sees you're safe and strong, his body is relaxing. That evening, back at their apartment, Grace and Kelvin sat on the couch in comfortable silence. Thank you, Grace said finally. For what? For having those documents ready, for standing by me, for believing in me. Grace, you don't need to thank me for that. Yes, I do. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I would stand up to Margaret like that, I would have laughed. I was so scared of her. What changed? Grace thought about it. I stopped being alone. Kelvin looked at her. You're not alone anymore. Neither are you. They sat quietly for a moment, both thinking about how much their lives had changed. Kelvin, can I ask you something? Anything. When you were getting those documents ready, when you were preparing to fight Margaret, why? This isn't your family. This isn't your fight. Kelvin was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what I told you about the girl outside the nightclub? The one who was being attacked? Yes. I could have walked away. It wasn't my business. I didn't know her. But you didn't walk away. No, because some things are right or wrong regardless of whether they're your business. Grace studied his face in the lamplight, and Margaret stealing from Papa Samuel was wrong. Margaret stealing from Papa Samuel was wrong. Margaret trying to destroy you was wrong. Margaret trying to have me arrested for crimes I didn't commit was wrong. So you fought for me. I fought with you, there's a difference. Grace felt something warm spreading through her chest. Not gratitude, not relief, something deeper. What happens now? She asked. Now Margaret faces the consequences of her actions. The police will investigate. She'll probably be arrested. And us? Kelvin met her eyes. What do you want to happen with us? Grace realized she knew the answer, but she wasn't quite ready to say it out loud. I want us to keep being partners. Partners? Kelvin repeated softly. Yes, partners. But as Grace said the word, she knew it wasn't enough anymore. Somewhere between the fake photos and the police station, between Kelvin's gentle protection and his fierce loyalty, something had shifted. She was starting to feel things for her husband that had nothing to do with their arrangement and everything to do with the man he was. They had survived Margaret's attacks. The question now was whether they could survive their own growing feelings for each other. Because falling in love was never part of their deal. Grace stared at Dr. Williams in shock. What did you just say? The test results show that your grandfather's cancer is in complete remission. The tumors have shrunk by 90%. Papa Samuel sat up straighter in his hospital bed, looking stronger than he had in months. Doctor, does this mean? It means you're going to live, Mr. Samuel. Not just live, you're going to recover fully. Grace felt her knees go weak. Kelvin caught her arm gently, steadying her. But how? Grace whispered. The doctors said it was terminal. Sometimes the body surprises us. The combination of surgery, medication, and, Dr. Williams smiled, reduced stress seems to have worked miracles. Reduced stress. Your grandfather's health started improving dramatically after your mother stopped visiting. When people stop living in fear and worry, the body can focus on healing. Grace looked at Papa Samuel, whose eyes were brighter than she'd seen them in a year. Papa, you're really going to be okay. More than okay, my child. For the first time in months, I feel like living again. Grace burst into tears, not the scared, desperate tears she'd cried so many times before. These were tears of pure joy and relief. Kelvin's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. Without thinking, Grace turned into his embrace, letting him hold her as she sobbed with happiness. It's okay, Kelvin murmured against her hair. He's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Grace looked up at him through her tears and felt her heart skip. When had Kelvin's eyes become so warm? When had his touch started feeling like home? 3 weeks later, Papa Samuel was released from the hospital. Grace had never seen him look so healthy and happy. Where will you stay, Papa? The house in Mushin is gone, yes. But Grace, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a new beginning. Kelvin stepped forward. Sir, our apartment is small, but you're welcome to stay with us until you find something. Papa Samuel smiled. That's kind of you, son, but I have other plans. What plans? I want to go back to my village in Ogun State. I have a small plot of land there. I think I'd like to build a house, plant a garden, live simply. Grace felt panic rise in her chest. Papa, that's so far from Lagos. What if you get sick again? Then I'll come back. But Grace, I've spent the last year afraid of dying. Now I want to spend whatever time I have left actually living. That evening, as Papa Samuel packed his few belongings, he pulled Grace aside. My child, we need to talk. About what, Papa? About your husband. Grace felt her cheeks warm. What about him? Do you love him? The question hit Grace like a thunderbolt. Did she love Kelvin? Papa, it's complicated. We married for practical reasons. I know why you married him. I'm asking if you love him now. Grace thought about the past few weeks. Kelvin bringing her coffee every morning. Kelvin holding her when she cried. Kelvin fighting Margaret's lies with such fierce protection. Kelvin sleeping on the couch every night, giving her space she no longer wanted. "I think I do," she whispered. "Then why do you look so sad about it?" "Because it wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to be partners, not what, not happy, not in love." "Papa, what if he doesn't feel the same way? What if I'm just convenient for him?" Papa Samuel took her hands in his weathered ones. "Grace, that young man looks at you like you're the sun in his sky. If you can't see that, you're not as smart as I raised you to be." That night after Papa Samuel went to sleep in the bedroom, Grace and Kelvin sat in their usual spots, her on the couch, him in the chair across from her. But something felt different. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken words. "Are you okay?" Kelvin asked. "You've been quiet since we got home." "I'm thinking about Papa Samuel leaving." "Are you going to miss him?" "Yes, but that's not what I'm thinking about." Kelvin waited for her to continue. "I'm thinking about us, about what happens when it's just you and me here." "What do you mean?" Grace took a deep breath. "Kelvin, these past few weeks, something has changed." "What's changed?" The way I feel about you has." Kelvin went very still. "Grace, let me finish. I know this wasn't part of our deal. I know we agreed to be partners, not more, but I can't pretend anymore." "Pretend what?" Grace met his eyes. "That I don't care about you, that I don't look forward to seeing you every morning, that I don't feel safe when you're near me." Kelvin stood up slowly and moved to sit beside her on the couch. "Grace, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that I've fallen in love with my husband, and I don't know what to do about it." Kelvin was quiet for so long that Grace started to panic. Had she ruined everything? "Kelvin, please say something." "I'm trying to find the right words." "Any words would be good right now." Kelvin turned to face her fully. "Grace, I fell in love with you the day you married me to save your grandfather's life." Grace's heart stopped. What? Was he trying to say what she thought he was trying to say? But she wasn't even beautiful. How could a man like him, a living Adonis, fall in love with a plain Jane like her? "You were so scared, but you did it anyway. You sacrificed yourself for someone you loved. That's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were nothing like anyone I'd ever met. That you were brave and selfless and real." Grace felt tears starting again. "But you never said anything." "Because it wasn't fair to you. You married me out of desperation, not choice. I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel trapped." "So you've been sleeping on that uncomfortable couch for months while being in love with me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to choose me freely, when you were ready, if you were ever ready." Grace reached for his hands. "I'm ready now." Kelvin's smile was soft and warm. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering with words, Grace leaned forward and kissed him. It was nothing like their wedding kiss, brief and formal. This was real, soft and sweet and full of months of growing feelings. When they broke apart, Kelvin rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Grace." "I love you too, Kelvin." "So what happens now?" Grace smiled. "Now we stop pretending this is just a business arrangement." "And start what?" "Start being married for real." That night, for the first time since their wedding, they shared the same bed. Not out of obligation or expectation, but out of love and choice. Grace woke up the next morning in Kelvin's arms, feeling more content than she ever had in her life. "Good morning, Mrs. Hartman," Kelvin murmured sleepily. "Good morning, husband. How does it feel?" "How does what feel?" "Being in love with me, instead of just married to me." Grace laughed. "It feels like the difference between surviving and living." Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Grace and Kelvin weren't just partners anymore. They were truly husband and wife. Kelvin showed Grace parts of Lagos she'd never seen. They took weekend trips to beaches in Lekki. They ate at small local restaurants Grace had never been able to afford. Grace helped Kelvin reconnect with his love of helping people. Together, they started volunteering at the orphanage in Mushin where Kelvin had been donating money. "You know what I love about this?" Grace said one Saturday as they played with the children. "What?" "We're doing good things together, as a team." "The best kind of team," Kelvin agreed. But their newfound happiness was about to be tested in ways they never expected. Grace's phone rang during lunch one day. The caller ID showed Mr. Hartman's name. "Hello, sir." "Grace, I need to speak with you and Kelvin. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" Grace's heart skipped. "Is everything okay, sir?" "Everything is fine, but there's something important I need to discuss with both of you." Grace looked at Kelvin, who had been listening. He nodded. "We'll be there, sir." 2 hours later, they sat in Mr. Hartman's impressive office in Victoria Island. The old man studied them both carefully. "I've been watching you two for the past few weeks," he began. Grace felt nervous. "Sir, the way you handled Margaret's attacks, the way you supported each other, the way you worked as a team." Kelvin leaned forward. "Father, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I was wrong about the 1-year waiting period." Grace's breath caught. "Wrong how?" Kelvin asked carefully. Mr. Hartman stood up and walked to his window overlooking Lagos Harbor. "When I made that deal, I thought you needed time to prove your marriage was real. I thought Grace might be like Victoria, interested only in money and status." "And now?" Grace asked quietly. "Now I see two people who genuinely care for each other. Two people who fight for what's right, not what's profitable." Mr. Hartman turned back to face them. "Kelvin, I'm restoring your position in Hartman Industries immediately. Full access to your trust fund. Complete authority over your projects." Kelvin stared at his father in shock. "Just like that?" "Just like that, but there's a condition." Grace's stomach tightened. There was always a condition with the Hartman family. "What condition?" Kelvin asked. "I want to see how you two work together in business. I'm giving you control of our agricultural development division." "Agricultural development," Grace repeated. Mr. Hartman smiled. "We've been looking to expand into sustainable farming, rural development projects. After seeing how you handled conflict as a team, I want to see how you handle business as a team." Grace felt her heart racing. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. "Sir, I don't have business experience at that level." "Grace, you survived Margaret's schemes, worked 3 jobs, managed your grandfather's medical care, and helped expose a fraud conspiracy. You think that doesn't require business skills?" Kelvin reached for Grace's hand. "What exactly are you proposing, father?" "A budget of 50 million naira to start. Your job is to develop profitable farming projects that create jobs in rural communities. If you succeed, the division becomes yours permanently." Grace's head was spinning. 50 million naira. That was more money than she had ever dreamed of touching. "And if we fail?" Kelvin asked. "Then you keep your inheritance anyway, but you'll work in our traditional businesses. Hotels, shipping, oil." Mr. Hartman sat back down. "The truth is, Kelvin, I need fresh thinking in this company. And Grace, you understand what it's like to struggle. Together, you might create something meaningful." Grace found her voice. "Why agriculture, sir?" "Because Nigeria imports too much food. Because young people are leaving villages for cities where there are no jobs. Because someone needs to make farming profitable and modern." Grace thought about Papa Samuel's village project, about all the young people she knew who had no opportunities. "Mr. Hartman," she said slowly, "what if we started with a pilot project? something smaller scale to test our ideas. The old man's eyes lit up with interest. What did you have in mind? My grandfather is starting a farming cooperative in Ogun State. What if we partnered with them, provided technology, training, equipment? Kelvin squeezed her hand, understanding immediately. We could create a model, he added. Show that modern farming can be profitable and create sustainable jobs. Mr. Hartman leaned forward. How much would you need for a pilot project? Grace's mind raced through calculations. 5 million naira for the first year. Equipment, training, infrastructure improvements. And if the pilot succeeds? We scale it up. 10 villages, then 20, then 100. Mr. Hartman was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. I like it. Start with your pilot project. If it works, we'll discuss the full 50 million budget. Grace felt like she was floating. From working as a cleaner 6 months ago to potentially running a 50 million naira business division. Sir, Kelvin said, are you sure about this? It's a big risk. Everything worthwhile is a risk, son. Besides, I have a good feeling about you too. As they left the office, Grace felt overwhelmed. Kelvin, this is incredible, but what if we fail? What if I'm not smart enough for this kind of business? Kelvin stopped walking and turned to face her. Grace, 6 months ago, you were working 3 jobs and fighting to keep your grandfather alive. Now you're about to become a business executive with a multi-million naira budget. That's what scares me. Look at everything you've already overcome. Margaret, Victoria, poverty, fear. You think managing a farming project is harder than surviving what you've already survived. Grace thought about it when you put it that way. Besides, we're doing this together. Partners, remember. Partners, Grace agreed, but now the word meant so much more. That evening, they called Papa Samuel to share the incredible news. Papa, you're not going to believe what happened today. Grace told him about Mr. Hartman's offer and their plan for the pilot project. My child, this is wonderful, but Grace, are you ready for such responsibility? I don't know, Papa, but I'm ready to try. That's my girl. Your father would be so proud. After they hung up, Grace and Kelvin sat on their couch, both still processing the day's events. We're about to be rich, Grace said wonderingly. We're about to be partners in every sense of the word, Kelvin corrected. Are you nervous? Terrified, Kelvin admitted, but also excited. For the first time in my life, I'm going to be working on something that matters. Something that helps people. Something we're building together. Grace curled up against Kelvin's side, feeling grateful and hopeful and completely overwhelmed. From a desperate woman marrying a stranger to save her grandfather to a businesswoman with a 5 million naira budget, it doesn't feel real. It's real, you earned it, Grace, every bit of it. We earned it. But as they made plans for their new business venture, neither of them knew that Victoria was planning her return, and she wasn't coming back empty-handed. But as they made plans for their new life, neither of them knew that Victoria was planning her return, and she wasn't coming back empty-handed. 6 months later, Grace stood in the middle of a transformed village in Ogun State, watching farmers load trucks with fresh vegetables bound for Lagos markets. The morning sun painted everything golden, and Grace had never felt more proud of anything in her life. Mrs. Hartman, the harvest reports are ready, said Samuel, one of the young agricultural coordinators they had trained. Grace still felt a thrill hearing that name, not just because she was married to Kelvin, but because she had earned the respect that came with it. Thank you, Samuel. How are the numbers looking? Beyond our projections, Ma. This harvest will bring in 3 times what these farmers made last year. Grace smiled as she reviewed the reports. Their pilot project had succeeded beyond everyone's wildest dreams. 20 villages now participated in their program. Over 200 young people had jobs. Thousands of families had better incomes. Her phone rang. Kelvin's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, husband. How did the Lagos meetings go?" "Better than expected. Father is officially approving the 50 million naira budget expansion." Grace felt her heart soar. "Really? Really? Grace, we're about to become one of the largest agricultural development companies in West Africa." Grace looked around at the bustling village, children playing, farmers working, young people learning new skills. This was what 50 million naira could create across Nigeria. "I can hardly believe this is our life now," she said softly. "Believe it, you've earned every bit of it." That afternoon, Grace was in Papa Samuel's house, reviewing expansion plans when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sister Grace, we need to talk. I'm in the village. Don't make a scene. Victoria." Grace's blood went cold. Victoria was here. She looked out the window and saw her sister standing near the village market, wearing expensive clothes that made her stand out like a sore thumb among the simply dressed villagers. Grace's first instinct was to call Kelvin, but something stopped her. For 6 months, Victoria had been gone, presumably hiding from the consequences of helping Margaret. Now she was here. Grace wanted to know why. Grace walked to the market slowly, keeping her expression neutral. Several villagers greeted her warmly as she passed. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hartman. How is the new irrigation project going?" And Grace saw Victoria's eyes widen at the obvious respect and affection in their voices. "Hello, Victoria." "Grace?" Victoria looked her up and down, taking in Grace's simple but expensive clothes, her confident posture, the way people looked at her with admiration instead of pity. "What do you want?" "To talk privately." Grace led Victoria to a quiet area near the village school they had built. "You look different," Victoria said, and for the first time Grace heard uncertainty in her sister's voice. "I am different. I heard about your business success, about Kelvin's inheritance, about your new life." "What do you want, Victoria?" Victoria's mask of confidence slipped slightly. "I want to apologize." Grace blinked in surprise. "What?" "For everything, for helping Mama with her schemes, for trying to destroy your marriage, for being cruel to you." Grace studied Victoria's face. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" Victoria's composure cracked. "I've been in Abuja, living with a man who promised to take care of me after Kelvin rejected me. And he threw me out when Mama got arrested, said he didn't want to be associated with criminals." Grace felt a flash of sympathy but kept her voice neutral. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "Grace, I have nothing. No money, no house, no man. Mama is in prison, I'm alone." "What do you want from me, Victoria?" "I want a chance to start over. I heard you're hearing people for your agricultural projects. I need work." Grace stared at her sister in amazement. Victoria, who had always looked down on honest work, was asking for a job. "Victoria, you tried to destroy my marriage. You helped Mama steal from Papa Samuel. Why would I trust you?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm your sister, because I have nowhere else to go, because—" She took a shaky breath. "Because I was wrong about everything." "Wrong about what?" "About you, about Kelvin, about what really matters." Victoria looked around at the thriving village. "I thought you were weak for marrying him. I thought you were stupid for caring about Papa Samuel. But look at what you built. Look at how people respect you." Victoria's voice broke. "I spent years trying to marry rich men, and you actually became someone worth respecting." Grace felt her anger softening, but she wasn't ready to forgive yet. "Victoria, even if I wanted to help you, how do I know you won't betray me again?" "You don't, but Grace, I have nothing left to betray you for. I lost everything because of my choices." Just then Kelvin's car pulled up. He got out and immediately walked toward Grace, his face protective and alert. "Grace, is everything okay?" Victoria looked between Grace and Kelvin, seeing the obvious love and partnership between them. "Hello, Kelvin, you look well." "Victoria," Kelvin's voice was cautious, "what are you doing here?" "I came to ask my sister for forgiveness, and for a chance." Kelvin looked at Grace questioningly. Grace appreciated that he didn't try to make the decision for her. "Kelvin, Victoria wants a job in our agricultural program." Kelvin's eyebrows rose. "Is that right?" "I know I don't deserve it," Victoria said quietly, "but I'm willing to start at the bottom, do whatever work you'll give me." Grace looked at her sister, really looked at her. Victoria's expensive clothes couldn't hide the fact that she looked tired, defeated, genuinely sorry. "Victoria, if I give you this chance, there are conditions." "Name them." "You start as a general laborer. You work in the fields, you live in the workers' quarters, you earn your way up like everyone else." Victoria nodded quickly. "You never lie to me again, about anything." "I understand. And if you cause problems for any of our workers or our program, you're gone immediately." "I agree." Grace looked at Kelvin, who nodded slightly. "There's one more thing, Victoria." "What?" "You write a letter to Papa Samuel apologizing for what you did, and you help us file paperwork to try to get his house back from Mama's estate." Victoria's face showed genuine emotion for the first time. "Grace, I'll do anything to make this right." 3 months later, Grace stood on the balcony of their new house overlooking the agricultural center they had built. It was a beautiful compound with modern facilities for training farmers, processing crops, and coordinating distribution. Below her, she could see Victoria working in the vegetable gardens alongside other trainees. Her sister had kept her word, working hard without complaint, slowly earning the respect of the other workers. Kelvin joined Grace on the balcony, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Penny, for your thoughts. I was thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I was cleaning offices at 5 in the morning and serving food until midnight, desperate to save Papa Samuel. And now I'm running a 50 million naira business that employs over 1,000 people. Papa Samuel is healthy and happy. We're actually making a difference in people's lives. And you're married to a man who adores you." Grace leaned back against Kelvin's chest. "That too. Do you ever miss the old life?" Grace thought about it seriously. "I miss the simplicity sometimes, but not the fear, not the desperation, not feeling powerless." "Any regrets?" "About marrying you to save Papa Samuel? Never. It was the best decision I ever made." Kelvin turned her around to face him, even though it started as just business. "Especially because it started as business. It means we chose to love each other. It wasn't just chemistry or romance. We built something real together." Grace's phone buzzed with a message from Papa Samuel. "My dear child, I saw the news story about your company winning the National Agriculture Innovation Award. Your father would be so proud. I am so proud. Love, Papa." Grace showed Kelvin the message, feeling tears of happiness in her eyes. "From grass to grace," Kelvin said softly. "What do you mean?" "It's an old saying, from grass to grace, from poverty to blessing, from struggle to success. That's your story, Grace." Grace looked out over their agricultural center, then at the ring on her finger, then at the man she loved who had become her true partner in every sense. "Our story," she corrected. "This is our story." As the stars came out over their little corner of Nigeria, Grace felt completely content. She had everything she had ever dreamed of and much more that she had never dared to dream. A loving marriage built on real partnership, a business that helped people and made money, the respect of her community, financial security for Papa Samuel, even a chance for Victoria to redeem herself. Grace's phone rang one last time that day. The caller ID showed Margaret's lawyer. "Mrs. Hartman, I'm calling about your mother's case." Grace stepped away from the porch. "Yes. Your mother has requested to see you. She's eligible for parole in 2 years and wants to apologize in person." Grace looked back at Papa Samuel and Kelvin laughing together, at Victoria chatting with the other workers, at the thriving community they had built. "Tell my mother I forgive her," Grace said quietly, "but I'm not ready to see her yet, maybe someday. When she's proven she's really changed, like Victoria has." "I'll pass along the message, ma'am." Grace hung up and returned to the porch. "Everything okay?" Kelvin asked. "Everything is perfect." And for the first time in Grace's life, that was completely true. Real love isn't just about passion and romance. It's about partnership, trust, and building something meaningful together. Grace and Kelvin's love grew from mutual respect and shared values, making it stronger than any fairy tale romance. Grace learned that true success isn't just about wealth or status. It's about using your blessings to bless others. Her greatest achievement wasn't becoming rich. It was creating opportunities for hundreds of other people to improve their lives. Remember Grace's story when life feels impossible, when you feel powerless, when people underestimate you, when the future seems uncertain. Sometimes our greatest struggles prepare us for our greatest successes. From Grass to Grace isn't just about money or status. It's about becoming the person you were meant to be, finding love that lifts you up, and using your blessings to make the world a little bit better. That's how we all move from surviving to thriving, from fear to faith, from grass to grace.